my name is Richard Mills, and join me with Going Deep with Jovy Hernandez, the Senior Vice President of the Enterprise Group of Smart Communications, with a fantastic story about his life and what we all can learn from it. Join me, Richard Mills, on Going Deep. So welcome everyone to Going Deep with me, Richard Mills, and today we have, well, all of our guests are special, but this one is special. His name is Jovy Hernandez. He is Senior Vice President, his title is Senior Vice President and Head of the Enterprise Business of PLDT and Smart. This is a large, for people who aren't from Philippines, this is a large business group and a very dominant telecommunications organization, certainly in Philippines. Jovy travels the world representing Philippines and doing things that help the country on the telecommunications side, and certainly has been key in developing the nation's telecom infrastructure over the years. Also a young guy, if you can see him most, I'll just say, I'm not putting anybody on the spot here, Jovy, but seems like a lot of the telecom guys were old, weren't they, that I remember. And you were the one guy who was young. And I just thought, gee, that's so interesting. And yeah, quite a career you've had. And I know many of us were surprised at how quickly you moved up and built good relationships with people and really did well in your career. So maybe we could start off, Jovy, if you can, just to tell us a bit about your career, maybe a short history if you can, and who you are.
My history is pretty diverse. I actually graduated from the University of the Philippines in Los Baños, and my undergraduate degree is agricultural economics. So pretty far.
Yeah.
So I always dreamt of having a farm. I wanted to go to the office riding a horse. I had boots on when I was in college, but I guess that didn't push through. I spent 2 years with the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, and I worked for them in the cards business during that time. And I was a salesperson. I was a relationship manager during that time. After a 2 year stint with Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, I decided to take my master's full time at the Asian Institute of Management for 2 years. So that was 98 to 2000. And from there, I was fortunate enough to be able to join a management trainee program. Some graduates from schools and be management trainees. And I think we were about 10 people from AIM that joined the group. I think it was my first 4 months in PLDT. I wasn't really doing anything that much, so I wanted to leave. Because naturally, from a person who just finished his master's degree, I wanted to do something really substantial. But I had the liberty of working for Al Panlilio during the time. He was the one who hired me. I was his executive assistant.
Really?
The good thing about it was that I was able to get a bird's eye view of the whole corporate business. And then from there, it was all PLDT. And 20 years after, here I am, heading up the enterprise group. There was still a lot of history in between that. I was even shipped out to Cebu. I was based in Cebu for 2 years.
Really? And what were you doing in Cebu, Jovy?
Again, as I mentioned, I started out as an executive assistant to Al. And then after 4 months, they actually asked me to help. I'm sure you remember Cesar Enriquez, who was part of the group before. Yes. He's retired now. I believe he's in Canada right now. We were tasked to create the credit group for the corporate business of PLDT. And fresh out of my master's degree, I said, I don't want to go to sales anymore. I'm tired of selling. So I wanted to do corporate planning and strategy. But the opportunity of creating the credit group for PLDT enterprise team during that time came about. So we did that. And I eventually headed that for 2 years. And then from there, I was asked, when Eric Alberto came in, he asked me to actually go to Cebu to be head of Visayas. So I literally had to take my whole family, my whole house, the whole 9 yards to Cebu. And I stayed there for 2 years. I honestly thought I would be based in Cebu already because it was pretty good. Uh, there was nothing in Manila that was not in Cebu. I was just 15 minutes away from the beach, and it was a fantastic time. And I had a good team in Visayas. And if I remember correctly, during that time, we were able to double the revenues of Visayas during that time.
Is that
Uh,
right?
I was about to make an investment for a house up in the hills in Cebu, which
Mhm.
is like the Tagaytay area of Cebu, which was pretty nice. And then I got a call from Manila saying that we need you back in Manila. And I think it was only after 2 weeks I found myself back in Manila and I was now heading sales. I guess I was really born and my heart and soul is really for sales and marketing, so I couldn't escape it.
I see. And just for people who are watching from outside of Philippines, Cebu is the second largest city in Philippines, in the middle of the country, and famous for its beaches, where you can work until 3 in the afternoon and then go to the beach, or used to be able to go to the beach easily, 20 minutes or something like that.
Mhm.
Uh, Now, also for people again who are from outside the country and people who don't know, but could you talk about the PLDT organization and just the extent of it and the organization that you oversee? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So PLDT is the largest telecommunications operator in the country. Um, One of its subsidiaries, Smart Communications, handles the wireless side of the business.
Yeah.
Um, and EPLDT, another subsidiary, is now handling the data center side of the business and all of the ICT related stuff that we do. Um, Eventually, I became the head of the enterprise group, and during that time, the best way forward for us was to really integrate all of these three businesses together into one enterprise. It didn't make sense for companies to have, I'll have a group handling the fixed line
Yeah.
side of the business, and I'm talking to another group for wireless. It was a tough decision to make. There were a lot of adjustments that people had to make because on one side we had RMs during that time on the PLDT side where we were selling circuits, for example, for $2,000 per month, and then here we come asking them to sell, phones for plan 800 a month. So it was kind of two different worlds,
Huh.
um, and we were able to combine that. And now fast forward to today, the enterprise group handles anything and everything for our enterprise customers, be it fixed line, be it wireless, or be it data centers or ICT. They only talk to a single group. And that's one of the, I guess, the best value propositions that we have is that we are a single point of contact for all of our enterprise customers. And when we talk about enterprise customers, we started out, I'm sure you remember Richard PLDT Alpha. In the past,
Yes.
we were taking a look at the top 10,000 corporations only. And that has expanded already, especially for the Philippines setting where north of 90% of all enterprises are actually small and medium enterprises in the country. So today, our span of our mandate is not only for large enterprises, but we also take care of budding entrepreneurs, all of these small and medium and micro enterprises, for us to be able to help them succeed in their business.
I
So
see.
that's pretty much the landscape of the group. And as you know, the PLDT group is also into other infrastructure assets. We have a broadcasting company, TV5. We have
Yes.
Signal TV. We're into highways. We have the hospital group, and many, 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 many more.
Okay. And now you also head the EPLDT group, I understand.
Yes. So EPLDT, again, as I
Okay.
mentioned, handles the data center side of the business. We have 10 data centers in the country today. And
Wow.
all of our ICT solutions from cybersecurity, managed IT services, data center services for co-location, disaster recovery, all of these things. So I concurrently sit as the president and CEO of EPLDT.
I see. And you also seem to travel a lot and involved in international operations. Are you
I
still?
used to.
Okay.
If you recall, Richard, during that time when the BPO industry, I think that was year 2000, was close to zero in the country. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the group that was actually selling the country for BPO or for call centers during that time. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the group that was doing the country sell in the US, in
I
India,
see.
and
Yes.
looking back after 20 years, and if you see, the Philippines is still the number one in terms of voice, right, in the BPO industry, and we're a
Yeah.
close second on the BPO side. So that has allowed me to take a look at opportunities in terms of working with other cultures outside of the Philippines, which is quite interesting because I remember perfectly well the first time I went to India, and we saw the CEO of Tata Communications, and
Wow.
I was with Mitch Luxin during that time,
Okay.
um, and I remember entering the boardroom of Tata Communications in India, and they had this huge wall which had the map of the world, right? And they actually placed their logos where Tata was actually located across the world. And we started to ask ourselves, why are we just Philippines, right? Why is PLDD Enterprise, for example, just serving the Philippines? How come we can't serve, outside of the Philippines from an expansion perspective? And today we're very pleased that we have a team now in the US, in the UK. We have people in Singapore, Hong Kong, and China. And that has actually expanded our customer base. So we're serving a lot of global companies, and we're partnered also with a lot of the other global telcos in serving our enterprise customers.
I see. Okay, good. And when you say now enterprise for this is business clients, and
That's right.
how small would be the smallest business client that you would be able to look after?
So even the smallest company, if you're a new entrepreneur and you
Okay.
want to open up a business, we help you out. As long as you're an enterprise, you're a business that is outside of the house. If you're renting a commercial space and you have
Oh, I see.
every intention to expand, we will cover you and we will help you. So
All right.
from just not just from connectivity, we now have a lot of digital solutions. So from building your website, for you to be able to accept payments like Paymaya. So we put that all together to be able to help our entrepreneurs succeed in their business ventures.
I see. Good. And yes, I had that's something I forgot that you were heavily involved in the early days of the BPO, explosive success that has been for this country. And just for people listening, Mitch Loxon at that time, I remember he was head of the BPAP, the
Yep.
Business Process Association, and you worked closely with him. And then he ended up working for your organization later. Um,
Yes, that's correct.
yeah, in a senior capacity.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, okay. Well, Jovi, can I ask you a personal question? Now, I'm sure when you were first hired as a management trainee, there was other people who were hired at the same time,
Hmm.
others before and after. Now,
I was actually the last one to be hired.
well, you were. Okay, so there's a lot ahead of you. And you with a what you described as a farming, degree and pretty good on musical instruments, but not really the what you might call the typical telecommunications background. But you seem to have done very well, moving up and then running this large group. This is a very large group, just for people watching. Why is that? Why do you think you kind of moved up? What was the process of that, and what do you think?
Well, thanks, Richard. I'm still learning.
No, no. Well,
Uh,
to help
what's
others.
what's
Yeah.
interesting about the telecommunications industry, especially now that technology, the pace of technological change is so fast. I remember when I was new, and I was trying to learn data services when I was still new, and they gave me books to read on what data services were, and I found myself even after a year of reading, I couldn't under. I mean, I understood the foundational, but I really couldn't get a good grasp of what we are actually doing. And I think in the technology space, the easiest way for you to learn is to really be able to use technology yourself, right? So if you touch it and feel it and use it, that's the easiest way to learn. And that's one of the things I think if you can call myself successful as part of um, fact, I think the key success factors would be to continuously learn, right? Tomorrow there's going to be a new technology. Now we're talking about cloud services. There's 5G. We heard China is probably working already on 6G. So
Wow.
if you have the propensity to continuously learn, and it's quite tiring, uh, Richard. The pace of work in the telco space is incredible. And we always say that if you love pressure, you will thrive in this industry. So, and then I guess during that time is the flexibility and mobility. If you recall, I mentioned I was asked to go to Cebu, and somebody who has lived all his life in Manila, and somebody like me who got married at 20 years old, I was still second year college, and
Wow.
I was starting a family. It was kind of unthinkable, first of all, number one, for me to stop working from Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank and pursue my master's degree because I had a family to support, right? So
Sure.
it's really making those decisions, making those bets. And then when I was already working for PLDT, my family was starting to flourish. I was then asked to go to Cebu, but I was willing and mobile enough to be
See.
able to accept that position. And I think that's something that I can impart to the young people. I think being flexible and you want something, yes, but there might be adjustments along the way. And if you're willing to make those sacrifices and adjustments, I think that's going to be better as long as you continue to learn the craft and make yourself better, and you do your ordinary duties extraordinarily well. I think anybody could do well. I mean, I was a perfect I had the perfect recipe for failure, Richard.
Why
I
is that?
I got married when I was second year college.
Okay.
Then I became, because of my background, you can see I became a rock star. I was living the rock and roll lifestyle during that time. My hair was up to my waist, right? Um,
What?
and then at a certain point in my life, I made a decision to cut my hair because it was time to, be serious, to be able to support the family. So it was those
Sure.
decisions, those are the personal decisions in my life that had happened, which I think has molded me to what I am today. I don't know whether you can call me a successful person, still learning, um, and I still continually try to help other people also see what I've experienced so they can actually apply that in their own lives. So
Sure. So those are two good things. So flexibility and always learning. Uh,
definitely.
yeah. And so now your music thing, just a minute for that, but you were quite serious about that for at that time.
I
Uh,
did that professionally for I'd say about 6 years.
did you?
Yeah,
So
I was in a
games
band.
every weekend? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was in a band. We were signed up with Ivory Records during that time. I remember when I was still in Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, I would work 9 to 5 in the bank. At 5, there would be days that at 5 o'clock when I get out of the office, there would be a van waiting for me because we had to go to the province and play. I would play until 12 midnight, probably get back to the house at about 4 a.m., take a
Oh,
shower, and get back to the office the next day. I did that for almost 2 years with Hong Kong Bank, and but it was worth it. I mean, things that I needed to do during the time to be able to support the family, also that was a driving force also for me to do all of those things.
wow, that is interesting. But
But
again,
you see, I still maintain that hobby. It's still
you
there,
do.
and now it's my kids who are actually who do the music stuff. I'm just their sound engineer.
Okay. No, but again, well, okay. So those are really good suggestions. Now, so this is the advice you would give to young people is flexibility, always learning. Is there anything else though? There must be some other things you would add to that, Jovi. What do you think?
Um, well, yeah, a lot of people will say that their success is because of their own efforts or talents. In my case, I still firmly believe that part of the success that I've had is because of my bosses in the past.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I mean, take a look at, for example, MVP. I'm not a direct report to MVP, but a lot of people always ask me, "You've been there for 20 years. What keeps you going? Why are you still with PLDT?" And I always say, I still believe in the cause. I still believe on in what our chairman wants to do, and especially his honest to goodness effort to helping the country. And as long as you believe in the cause of the company and its purpose and its mission, I think that will be a driving force for you to stay on. So even, for example, for the enterprise group, we've just renewed our vision, and we made it very simple for everybody to understand. It's just really making a positive impact on every single business. And every single day when I wake up, if I know that I'm going to make an impact for another business, then that keeps us going.
Sure it does. And just again, for people outside the country, MVP is Manny Pangilinan, who's certainly one of the most prominent by far business leaders in the country, who really has made a big impact on the nation's growth and you know jobs and all of that. So, and he's the overall head of the PLDT group, among many other activities. Okay, well, Jovi, can I ask you a difficult question that I
Sure.
hope you might have an answer for? Now, we've both seen many good people with impressive backgrounds, both educationally and family and friends and so forth, but sometimes, or for whatever reason, they don't succeed. What do you think are some key things that people do to harm their careers? What have you seen? Because I'm sure you've hired people, we both have,
Mm.
that you have high expectations for, and they have everything in place, it seems, and then they don't, it doesn't work out. What do you see as some of the things helping other people to learn?
Well, I don't. I'm not an expert in everything, but
I know.
some of the things that I see, um, but at least from our experience, number one is your integrity should be unquestionable. That's number one, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the sales and marketing side of the business, I think the number one thing that an individual has is the trust that the company gives him or her, right? And that is something that we have to keep sacred always. It's you're not going to succeed every single time. It's like sales. I mean, you're not going to hit your targets every single month or every single quarter. But at the end of the day, when we look at people who are equipped to move up the organization, it's less and less about the numbers. It's about the attitude of the person. Are you a team player? I mean, there are fantastic people who have fantastic minds, but who prefer to work alone. So I guess it depends on the requirement of the company. But from our case, we look for people who can work under pressure, who can work cohesively with others, and being team players. Of course, all the other things are there in terms of foundational skills, etc., etc. But I guess the number one thing that I saw, which is quite sad sometimes, is that we have good people who sometimes, they bend their integrity a little bit, and that's really a no-no. I'd rather not get the job as long as I do it straight. Um, and today, this year, especially year of the ox, it's my year, right? It's my year of the ox, and the ox has always been um, known for honest to goodness hard work, and that's the tried and tested formula. I've learned that in my banking career for 2 years. Nothing beats hard work, pure hard work. And at the end of the day, your leaders will eventually see that, and they will give you the break that you need. And I think I saw that when the company trusted me and made a bet on me and made me go to Cebu. But I also had to make my own bet. So it's both sides. It's give and take for both sides. And I think in hindsight, while it was very difficult for me to go to Cebu, I think that was also a defining moment in my career where the company saw that I was flexible enough to move out, go here, go there, do the job there, go come back. So I guess again, being flexible and integrity is number one. Always keep that intact.
Yeah. Okay. Good advice. And you do work hard. I know everybody, all of our reports that you work hard, Jovi. I don't know. Your wife puts up with it, and you got to
Uh,
do when you want to move up, you got to work hard. There's no getting around it.
I remember during that time, I always told my people, they always complained because I would send emails at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in
Yeah,
the morning. But
I've
I've always,
received some. Yeah.
sorry about that.
No,
But I've always believed that if I had to do something, I cannot sleep until I finish it. So take, for example, as simple as emails. I have made it a point that my rule is that I should be able to answer all my emails before I sleep, or at least acknowledge, right? So
sure.
until today, even if I get thousands of emails per day, uh, well, there were some times that I missed it, but I still get back to them after 24 hours. So those are the disciplines that I have imposed on myself,
Yeah.
and during those sleepless nights, at the end of the day, when you take a look at it, it was all worth it, right? So it's about decisions you make in life, and there are accountabilities, and there are, whatever decision you make, there's going to be a result of that, and you have to be accountable for what that is. So even if I
Sure.
didn't sleep, that's fine. I have disciplines in place, and I have made sure that
Are going to be demanding bosses. That is the way it works. And,
mm,
you know, Manny Pangilinan, for instance, MVP, he's known as a very demanding person because he has big goals, big missions that he wants to get done, and things have to work. How do you work for a demanding boss and not be driven insane? What advice could you give to, because you've done it successfully. You've had very high powered, strong willed people. How did you manage this?
no, I think it's a matter of perspective, Richard. So a lot of people, especially young people, what I notice now is that when they encounter, quote unquote difficult bosses, they
Yeah.
take that negatively, right? In my perspective, I think I would like my boss to be demanding to me. First of all, if he's demanding to me, that means he trusts me. That I'd rather have my boss talk to me than him not talking to me at all, right?
Correct.
So if he's hard on me, I'm sure there is a purpose, and that is actually making me learn things. So and I apply that to my own team. Although I've been also labeled to be too good sometimes, but I try to push my team, not to make their lives miserable, but really to make them learn,
Sure.
and so that moving forward they become better people, and they can eventually replace me. That's the whole objective. How can I move up if somebody cannot replace me, right? so
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
there are people that you see that have the potential, even at a very young age. Sometimes we make a bet on them. Yes, they will make mistakes, but let them make mistakes, because that's the way they're gonna learn, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and again, going back, that was my own experience. When they sent me to Cebu, they made a bet on me. Oh, I did make mistakes, Richard. Don't get me wrong. I did make mistakes during that time. But that's where I learned. And then when I came back, I think that made me more mature. That made me more ready for more responsibilities. And the only rule is that you can make mistakes, but do not make the same mistake twice.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Good advice. Um, Jovi, you've worked with a vast range of international people from many different countries, and you travel a lot and so forth. But even the companies that come here, the first thing most of them want to do is make sure they're going to have, a good telecommunications provider. So they speak with you. Have you noticed anything different about the different, the differences between different business cultures? Are they as big as some say, or is that overrated? What would you say?
Well, I think the biggest difference that I saw, looking at all um, my international acquaintances, was that the branding of the Philippines of having malasakit, or
Yeah.
really a true blue customer experience focus, is really true. I remember when I was in Cebu, That was the first time I think that Shell Shared Services was trying to get into the country.
Okay.
One of their executives went to Cebu, and I've met with him. Um, and we were trying to be very helpful. And then suddenly they were making the decision already to enter the Philippines, and they were in Manila. In fact, when I told the management during that time, they even asked me to go back to Manila just to see this guy, and he was so surprised. In fact, when he saw me, he said, "Oh, my best friend is here," and
I
we said, I'm just here because we wanted to show you that we are sincere in terms of trying to help you. So it's that malasakit that has also fueled, I think, the success of the BPO industry until today. We still talk about that in our discussions, and even when we go out of the country now, Richard, and go to other places, that has always been a single contention that our customers are saying, that the level of service of the Filipino worker is truly world class. So that's what we try to still continue on, and I think that's going to be a. I mean, it's not saying that the other cultures are bad. I mean, they are. They're very professional. They're very straightforward. Sometimes Asians are not that straightforward, so we're learning also from them. But if I was asked to identify a single aspect that differentiates the Filipino worker, I would still say it's malasakit.
Yes, how many times have I heard that from others where they go to the different places to look at, and it always becomes one of the key factors in choosing Philippines. So yeah, that's a very important thing. Now, Jovi, sometimes I've noticed, and Filipinos have told me that they get a bit intimidated by people from some countries. No, not. I mean, some foreigners, or what people in Philippines call foreigners. You are very successful dealing with people from all kinds of backgrounds and so forth. But sometimes I've noticed people. Well, okay, I'll give you an example. Um, Different times I've had senior managers complain to me from different countries that they get on these Zoom calls of all their offices. Some will be in the Philippines, Costa Rica, these days India, Sri Lanka, and so forth. And the Filipinos are delivering the best, so they should be dominating the conversations. But they let, say, the Indian guys, not to pick on Indian guys at all, but just that they're very good at, point strong-willed and will speak up. Whereas the Filipinos, and the senior managers are saying, well, Richard, how can I get the Filipinos to stand their ground? And they should be the ones dominating these conversations. And meanwhile, they're the ones you don't hear from. So how do we, what advice would you give to other Filipinos on how to, I don't know, stand your ground, or not stand your ground, but how to interact at
Mm.
a at an equal level with people from different countries?
I think well, first of all, Richard, I found myself actually at that stage at a
Okay.
certain point in my career. And I
Yeah.
think what is important is for us to be able to have that exposure with other people in terms of interacting with other cultures. I think that's very important. That's why when I started going with the BPO industry and trying to do the country sale, that was my first experience actually in terms of working with other countries and other cultures. And that gave me the exposure that I needed
See.
for me to also understand, how Indians talk, their body language, how Americans talk. And it's not that sometimes they're very forceful. It's not that they're not respectful. It's just how the way it is. So, and
Yes.
and Filipinos also, more often than not, it doesn't mean also that if they're not talking, they're not engaged. Sometimes I see a lot of Filipinos who are very respectful, who only talk when they're supposed to talk, right? But that's something that comes out of training and exposure. In fact, I remember my master's degree in AIM. That was the training that we had for 2 years. We had to debate with our professors
I see.
consistently. Even if you take the position that is the wrong position, you have to be able to defend it. So I guess it's just a matter of exposure. Um, And that's why even for us in our organization, when we see leaders who are, have the potential, we actually send them off for them to be able to have that international exposure, because that's also will make them grow.
I see. That's very interesting. See, I was going to ask you about that. So you believe that, international experience, either an overseas posting or experience like what you got, is key to a successful career, or just sort of an add-on?
No, I think so. I think that's very, very important.
Okay.
Uh, in fact, I see some of our guys who we sent out to other countries, when they come back, it's like they were transformed. They learn a lot of the things that they need to learn from a professional perspective from international folks, and when they get back, they're more confident. Um, Giving people the opportunity for speaking engagements, for example, it's quite important. I had my own
See.
jitters when I was starting, but when I
Yeah.
got the hang of it, if you ask, like today, Richard, you asked me for an interview, I said sure, no problem. But
I
before, if you would have asked me, I would have had my reservations.
see. Okay, that's interesting. Well, Jovi, maybe I could ask you some questions about yourself, but how would you describe yourself? I mean, are you introverted or extroverted? Are you, oh, what else can I add? Were you good at school or not so much? Did you follow the rules? Were you rebellious? What would you say about these things?
I'm I'd say, Richard, I'm a very complicated guy.
Okay.
In my younger years, yes, I usually graduated with honors. Um,
Did you? Okay.
but after high school, I think I was number 7 in high school, if I'm not mistaken. After high school, it was like I was, because I studied in an all boys school, Don Bosco Technical Institute, which is
I
quite
see.
interesting because it's both technical and academic, which is um, an interesting side of the business. So we also try to get a lot of engineers from Don Bosco because of that aspect. So when I entered college, it's like I suddenly rebelled. I was a nerd in high school. I was a nerd um, in grade school, and then when I entered college, I was a frat man in my freshman year.
Okay.
Uh, I started all my vices. That's when I started drinking and smoking. I had long hair. I was wearing boots. I got married when I was 20 years old. So suddenly I became like a rebellious guy, right? Living the rock and roll lifestyle. And then here I go, decided to cut my hair and become more corporate, right? And I'm now 5 days of the week I'm wearing a suit. And then on the weekends, sometimes when we have meetings, they see me in casual clothes. They always say, "Jovi, is that you?" Because I don't. I always say, "This is the real me." So it's I think it's finding the right balance, Richard.
Yeah.
I could be a nerd. I could be the rebellious type. I can be an extrovert. Sometimes in the family they say I don't talk at all, so that makes me an introvert sometimes. So I think it's finding the right balance. That has always been, um, if you call it secret, in my own personal opinion, it's finding that equilibrium and that balance of everything.
I see. Okay, interesting. And your upbringing, Jovi. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't get too personal, but it's interesting. How would you describe your parents? I mean, were they strict or were they, easy on you? How would you say they raised you?
I'd say they were strict. My dad was a
Okay.
lawyer.
All right.
So he was strict in a sense, especially during studies. Um, Boy, that's a difficult question. um, but they were pretty good in terms of. I mean, I didn't get everything. I didn't get everything. I mean, maybe a good example would be my drumming career, right?
Okay.
When I was young, I remember that I started playing drums using pencils and small boxes. And that was when my mom saw me and she decided to, buy me a drum set, and wasn't the
Ah,
nice one. Of course, it wasn't the nice one. But now that uh, sometimes I feel like I'm getting my second childhood, Richard, because now that I have sometimes have the means, now I do things that I would have wanted to do when I was young. But
yes.
that's also a critical point I think that needs to be made, Richard, especially for parents. At least my belief. I don't think it's good for you to give everything that your children want. No, I think they need to learn uh, the lesson of really longing for something and working for it.
Yeah.
Um, and then a lot of people tell me also that's the virtue that I was given, the virtue of fortitude, because I could, I could say I can live in difficult moments, I can live in fantastic moments, and again, it's always about perspective, Richard. It's always about perspective.
It is. Okay, very good, Jovi. Now, Jovi, there's a lot of talk about nature versus nurture in people's success in life. Nature for people who aren't familiar with the concept, how much of people's success is determined by their own genes, by what's in themselves, and how much by how they were nurtured by teachers, by their parents, and their upbringing. What do you think is the combination? Yes, it's always both impacted, but is one more is what's inside people more important than their nurturing, or is it the nurturing that's more important? What do you think?
I think it's the nurturing that's important, Richard.
Okay.
We have a different term for that. We have people who are pedigreed, we are pedicured.
Yes. Okay.
So, so that's really where some people are just privileged to be in a better position, but that doesn't mean that people who are in a lesser position have lesser probabilities of success. And I think it's really about, again, honest to goodness hard work. I'm not really from a known family. um, we're not rich. um, I had to take a loan for me to be able to study in AIM. It was a loan from my mom, right?
Hmm.
But again,
Yeah.
all of those things are decisions that you make in life that at the end of the day will also catch up to you. So, so there were difficult moments in my life. I mean, um, take for example when we were still a young couple, right?
Yep.
And the decisions about education for our children. And during that time, we made a decision together with my wife, and we said, I don't care what it takes, even if I have to work 24 hours, even if I will have to take a loan, I want to make sure that our children go to the best school. And
Okay.
for several years, we were doing that, Richard. Um, we were able to get him to, we think, is the best school. It was Paref Southridge during that time.
Hmm.
The tuition was enormous, and
Yeah.
we had there were times where we had to figure out, do we pay monthly, do we pay per semester, etc., etc. We should take a
Sure.
loan first. So we went through that, but I think that's really part of growing up and really making you a better person. Experiencing that, it would have been different if the parents would be there and, oh, here's the money, enroll your son to the best school. At least now I can say to anyone and look them straight in the eye, it was my because of my effort that we were able to do that. Of course, with the help of others, but we making those decisions and sticking to it, even if it is hard, I think is very key. So it's
Hmm.
the nurturing side to me, Richard. I think that is more important. I see a lot of people who are very skilled, but for example, lack the aptitude and the hard work. They don't make
Yep.
it. Some who have no pedigree, foundational skills are very poor. But if they work hard enough and there's somebody who can actually train them and be their mentor, I see a lot of very successful people who were like that, who started with nothing, Richard.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially these days. Sure. Okay. And now you mentioned that you had sales experience, and
Mhm.
do you think that was key in your career? Would you recommend? I mean, just like international experience, would you also recommend sales experience to?
Yes, definitely, definitely.
All right.
Uh, my first sales job again was in Hong Kong Bank. I was in the
Okay.
cards business, Richard. I
All
used
right.
to install those credit card machines where the people swipe.
Oh, yes.
Right? Okay, so a young guy, I would go to hotels, right? Put these machines in the front office, go under the table and screw those things to the PLDT landlines before for them to work. Um, and I would go to areas like Binondo, right? So again, that flexibility. I was like an Electrolux man during that time, Richard. I was walking in Avenida and Binondo with my trolley, with all of my machines that I would be installing for the day, right?
Is that right?
But a rock star in the past. Can you imagine me installing those machines under the tables? I mean, right?
Oh, yeah,
That was
sure.
that wasn't me, but I had to do it, right? But you know, it was part of the learning process. So being able to talk to people from cashiers to presidents of companies, that also helped me in the learning the flexibility in terms of talking to people. So whether they're CEOs or whether they're the lowest of the cashiers or the security guards, I'm friends with all of them.
I see. Okay. And now, Jovi, something else to ask you, but when you assess people for promotions, because this is also a key thing, key skill, like you said, you're not going to move up in an organization unless you've got people who can replace you. How do you assess people for promotions? What do you do? What's the process?
That's a very complicated process,
It
Richard.
is.
So
It
though there are
is.
many, many things that you take a look at. Again, some have the capability, but sometimes falter in aptitude or the reverse.
Okay.
And again, it's not all skill. As you move up the ladder, what we saw is that more and more what we need are the behavioral skills, people management skills.
Yes.
Uh, it doesn't mean that if you were a salesperson and you were the highest performer and you were hitting your targets all the time, it doesn't mean that you are the best manager who will be managing people. So those are two different skill sets. So there has to be a good working in close working relationship together with HR who studies all of these things. Um, in fact, now we have even in PLDT we have that program now. Even myself, I underwent that program, and we try to see where we're lacking. Um, Sometimes the results of the test are you don't agree with, but you just have to take that with a grain of salt and really take that constructively for you to be able to improve yourself. So that's feedback and feed forward, as we call it. So I try as my best to have one-on-ones with my people, with my one-downs, um, even on a personal level. I think that's very important because when you're friends with them, I think that's the only time you could be really honest with feedback, right? So like Mitch, I've worked with Mitch for a long time. We were together in the BPO industry, traveled with India together in the US, and because
Yeah.
of that, I can tell him, Mitch, your problem is this. So because of
Right.
that, he's now improving himself, and because we're at a level, there's respect because of the boss subordinate relationship. But at the end of the day, it's like family. If I tell Mitch, your problem is this, okay, and he will say, Jovi, your problem is also this. So it's a symbiotic relationship that happens.
Sure. Okay, well, that's good. And now you seem, well, you are a very motivated fellow. Do you think motivation is something you can teach others? You can nurture it? Um, that's one part of the question. And the second is, how do you motivate your people? Yes, you become good friends with them, but is there, what else is involved with that?
Well, the process that I personally do is on a personal level. I try to understand first where they want to go. I think that's very very important for a boss subordinate relationship. If you tell me that you want to be president of PLDT in 5 or 7 years or 10 years, then at least I know what we need to work on for you to be prepared to take on that role, right? Um, I remember um, that was one of the traits that was given to me as a feedback because when I joined PLDT, way back in 2000 when Alpanlilio hired me, I had a very simple objective, and I've made that known. I said I want to be the head of enterprise. Period.
Wow.
It
Wow.
didn't happen in 5 years. It didn't happen in 7 years. It probably took longer, but still, I was able to get that objective. So the question now is, what next, right? I won't mention that in this
No.
session.
Okay. All
So,
right.
so it's that. It's really identifying those objectives so we know which trees to cut. Um, because there are a lot of things that you can do to be able to get to an objective, but it's that symbiotic relationship between both subordinate and you having agreements on what you need to do to be able to achieve that. I think that's the most important.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. And now, Jovi, something a lot of people talk about a lot these days is their personal health, their physical health.
Yeah.
Working at senior levels like you work long hours, long hours, and health can suffer. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it too, I'm sure. Do you have special food and exercise programs that you're trying to follow? And are you successful at following them given the hours that you have to work?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
That's something I need to. That's something I need to improve on. Well, during the beginning of the quarantine, I remember I started walking every morning from 6:30 to 7:30, um, and I was telling my guys it was kind of difficult in the beginning because just the first 10 minutes I would be panting already, and it's like I was so tired. But after a while, when you get the hang of it, I was already doing 5 kilometers for 30 minutes, which was pretty good, and I started running and I felt better. I felt lighter. I felt healthier. Um, and then I don't know what happened. I stopped again. So I haven't been walking for a couple of months now, 2 months.
Yeah.
No
Well,
special food diet. Um, I like fat. So that's something I need to improve on.
yeah. Well, you're still a bit younger yet than me and a lot of the guys I know, but I know once you hit 50, Jovi, it's gonna, for most of us, this is what happened is you start to really,
Yep.
you got to make a change. And I sure saw that and the other guys I talked to. So if you're out there, a lot of young people think they're going to live forever and they're never going to have a pot belly and all this. But believe
That's
me,
true.
you gotta work at it to keep yourself healthy. It
That's
really
true.
does. I mean, it sound like I'm
That's one discussion point, in fact, that we're having now with the management team of Enterprise. We said, how
okay.
can we have a program in 2021, not only for us, but for everybody to be more healthy? So they were saying, all of these ideas, we could do online yoga, online
Oh,
spinning
yeah.
and all of these things. But at least the, uh, the, the mere fact that we're thinking about it, I think is a good start.
Yes, it is something very different from because you're right. Everyone is talking about it now, whereas even just 5 years ago, it wasn't something people would talk about. That was a
True.
personal issue, but it is a business issue. Yeah. Well, Jovi, your wife, your family, but your wife is key, your spouse, I should say, to anyone's success. I mean, you can't do it
Mhm.
anything meaningful if you go home at night and you're driven crazy or really deep problems. Now, I don't know, can you just tell us a bit about your wife and how you came to be married? You've already said you met in second year, I think, college. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And you've been together for a long time. How would you describe?
25 years now.
Wow. Okay, good for you.
Celebrated our silver wedding anniversary last year, just before the pandemic happened. So we
Nice.
were able to celebrate that. Yeah,
Interesting.
I think that's a good point, Richard. Especially about, for example, taking care of the kids. I'm fortunate
Yes.
that somebody's calling me for a meeting. I was fortunate enough to that my wife is a housewife now,
Okay.
so at least she's able to focus on the kids. Um, Before she was a career woman also. Um, so she worked for the Canadian Embassy, Richard,
Oh,
for a while.
really?
Yes, yes. And
Huh.
then I think it was the year 2000. before I entered PLDT, where she met a car accident.
Oh,
We She had a college friend from Las Vegas who went home, and they were going to, a dinner or something. They they left the house at about 8 o'clock. They fetched her, and then at 11 o'clock in the evening, Makati Med was already calling me, stating that they were in a car accident. Her friend died, and when I arrived
oh,
in Makati Med, she was half paralyzed already with all the tubes and whatnot.
oh,
Uh,
God.
Fast forward, she had a broken C3 and C4 in her spine, and that was a pretty difficult moment for us. That was the reason why I was the last one to be hired by PLDT, because I asked Al, I can't join now because of what happened to my wife. I had to be with her during therapy and whatnot. And then 3 months after, it was like nothing happened, and it was a bit miraculous from our point of view,
Hmm.
because even her neurosurgeon, um, because they Makati Med was actually asking me to sign a waiver if they will operate on her already, and I refused to sign it. So, but the doctor decided to put about 15 pounds of weight on her head just to straighten out her spine.
Wow.
And then one day, when the radiology department submitted to the doctor the X-ray, um, it said normal. And the doctor said, "How can it be normal? This was broken 2 days ago, blah, blah, blah." But it was normal. So even the doctor at Makati Med now uses that um, um, in his cases for just to teach doctors that it doesn't mean that you have to operate immediately. So, but
I
anyway, fast
see.
forward, it was like nothing happened. And then recently, so she started working also during after that. She became a teacher. In Cebu, she was teaching in Cebu International School. She was a teacher in Parif Woodrose.
Hmm.
Um, so I had the experience, Richard, of checking all of these student papers also. Of course, she would, as a teacher, she would bring home all of these papers at night, that she would check. Of course, I would end up also working with her, checking all of these papers.
Sure.
And then quite recently, I think it was
Ah,
3 4 years ago, she was diagnosed with aneurysm,
sheesh.
and we discovered a lot of things that's hereditary. um, but fast forward today, so she had to undergo cranial surgery, but she's perfectly fine now. I always tell her that, as a joke, that I forgot to tell her doctor that while they were operating on her, to remove all of my sins. She always says now she remembers them more vividly now. But she's all good. Everything's back to normal. And I guess those life experiences also are part and parcel of what made us today. So there were hard times, there were good times, there were average times. But at the end of the day, it's the perspective of both people and how to make the best of the situation. So we're thankful that everything's okay, everything's good with the kids. Um, so yeah, we're ready to take on the next challenge, so to speak.
I see. Well, that's interesting because my wife can't forget my trespasses either. I don't know, just doesn't forgive and doesn't forget. You know how it is. But now 25 years of marriage, you guys have been through a lot. Anybody did you feel that you here? I'll talk, guy to guy here. But do you feel that you understand women now, or it's still that you're kind of in the dark. I would say, I'll admit right now, I am still in the dark a lot. Most, but how do you feel about that?
Well, I still don't understand them completely, and I think the feeling is mutual. But I guess after 25 years of all of the experiences together, and you sometimes, Richard, when there are conflicts, you just think of how hard it was before that you guys have endured, and then you makes you think, "Oh, what are we even discussing about? This is so simple. Let's just work it together, right?" So I think that's the learning that I think is quite critical for any relationship,
Yeah,
and I think that's what makes it a relationship in the first place, right? So
correct. And they do have a lot of, I mean, there's so much that they can help us with as guys.
Definitely.
Um, you learn so much of them and so forth. So, yeah, I agree. Now, raising children, this is something that, is always a challenge. And I see, some people who, give their children everything. Others give them their children very little, But what do you think is the mix, or what are some of the ideas you have about raising your children?
Again, to me, it's a balance. Really, I mean, as a young parent, I've always tried to give them the best of everything. But it's also important to keep things away from them so that they learn the value of hard work and getting what they want. Um, and I think it's different now. I mean, the culture of kids are quite different. So you got to be able to, um, you know, go with the tide. I mean, if for social media, for example, you have to learn all of these things for you to understand what they're going through.
Yes.
What's good for me is that we share common themes like music. So for example, I have only one daughter. I have two boys. Um, and sometimes it's the relationship with the daughter that I have to take care of, right? Being the daughter, um, and at least we have a common theme because she's into music. In fact, 2 years from now, she's looking at entering Berkeley College of Music in the
Huh.
US. So at least there's a symbiotic relationship there. I help her out. So she's the artist. I'm the sound engineer. And because of my experience in music professionally in the past, then I'm able to help her also there. So you find those common themes, I think. So you could not only be a parent-child relationship, but um, you should work very hard for you to become friends. So something new that I'm into now, I'm into motorcycle riding. Something new that I picked up. So this Saturday, me and my eldest son are now enrolling in a motorcycle training thing. So at least that's something again that we do. And my youngest, he's 10. His name is
Oh.
Rocky, after rock and roll.
Hmm.
um, he is into cars. He's into bikes. He's into everything fast. So that's another common thing that we do. So we often find ourselves, also as best friends when we're having fun. So I think
See.
that's my personal take on that question.
Okay. And you mentioned a little bit about social media. Are there other differences that you think children contend with, young people contend with today than what we, or well, especially me, but even you're younger, contended with when you were growing up? How different do you think it is?
Uh, I think it's just different situations, but it's the same.
Okay.
That's my personal belief.
Okay.
If my parents before were being labeled as rebellious because of the Beatles, right? Um, and I was being labeled as rebellious because of my long hair because of rock and roll during my
Right.
era. It's the same thing that's happening now, and it's just the balance of trying to manage that for us to be able to understand them better and to give them what they need.
Okay. Well, Jovi, what do you think are some of the main opportunities for the Philippine economy over the next 5 years or 10?
I'm a firm believer that the Philippine economy is going to bounce back. Um, I think one of the things that are the traits of the Filipino is our resilience. We have had many challenges in the past that we found ourselves bouncing back. It's that resilience of the Filipino worker, and I think if the business community pulls together, I think we should be looking at better years ahead. I mean, 2021, we're very hopeful. We're still in the pandemic, but we see the economy opening up a bit, and we're now seeing a lot of our enterprise customers developing digital technologies that will allow us to better perform our duties and responsibilities in terms of our businesses and our roles in the economy. So I think it's going to be a good year this year, and we're very hopeful, and we hope that everybody will have the best of luck for 2021.
Sure. And now, Jovi, maybe last question, but you're a learner. You like learning new technologies, new things. What do you think are some of the main changes that are going to happen in our lives and work over the next few years?
Oh, there's a lot of things that's gonna happen. I mean, from a
Okay.
technology standpoint, there's IoT that we're very hopeful.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people have been talking about smart homes. I think we're gonna see that in the near future.
Okay.
Um, we're gonna see a lot more uses of technology in our daily life. 5G is here, and we're going to be aggressively rolling that out. That's going to have tremendous impact on the lives of people. We're still trying to put broadband to give broadband to a broader, to the broader population, and I think connectivity for a lot of people will become the opportunities for them to be able to do much more in their lives. So we're pushing for that, and again, whatever technology that comes in, I think it's the flexibility and the adaptability that we have as a people that will spell the difference whether we will be successful or not.
Sure it is. Jovi, we really, really appreciate your time and going through all of this. These were a lot of deep things that you went in. So people are going to be talking about this and appreciating it and learning from it because your story is an unusual one. If you look it up from a piece of paper, how a guy with a farming degree, that's not what it is, but someone might say that, who was also a rock and roll player and then becomes the head of it's kind of a lot to learn from there. So
There's still a lot more that we can talk in secret, Richard. I
I'm
was
sure.
I was going to be a priest when I was in high school.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I gotta
Anyways,
hear that.
thanks for having me, Richard.
Thank you too, Jovi. You take care of yourself and keep up the great work you and your group are doing.
Thank you. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
my friend.